So when you first open Arc Pro, you have this window here. You won't have a map here, but everything else should look the same. A couple of things to make sure are correct on it is you want to make sure you're signed in. You do need to be connected to Wi-Fi, at least for this first sign-in. If you have poor Wi-Fi or don't want to use the Wi-Fi, like you'll be out of service, you have to check out your license. And real quick, I'll show you how to do that because I know some of us are in rural Arizona. So you can check out your license right here where it says work offline, and that'll let you hold your license and use the program still. Okay, but so this is the first screen you kind of come up to make a map. We're gonna open up this map here, and it's gonna say a new project. So this is the first step if you want to do anything with it to do. You can name your project, and then you want to make sure you're saving your projects onto a hard drive on your computer, not an external drive. An external drive kind of bottles your information and it's not going to run appropriately, so you want to make sure it's on a hard drive. My hard drive that I use for mapping is R. And you can see where that folder is kind of saved. So if you do need to take a map onto an external drive and then go and put it onto another computer or what have you, this is where you will navigate to kind of pull all that information and do that. All right, so I'm going to open this map up. This is what a new map will look like every time. So to kind of get you oriented, over here on your left, we have the contents pane. This is where it'll show all of your shape files and features, as well as your drawing order, which is what you see there. So we'll come back to that again. Up at the top, we have the project, which is kind of back to this settings or properties of the map. We have the map, which has a lot of features that we'll come back to, but things like your base layer, adding data, selecting a shapefile or a feature, which don't panic if you don't know what those are. I will explain them further. We have insert. This is where we can add some more things. Again, we'll come back. Analysis, our views. So this is changing our actual views that we see in these windows and how they're organized. Editing, so editing shapefiles or features. Imagery, don't worry too much about this. This is pretty advanced. We'll probably get there later in the series. Sharing, so like if you wanted to export or print a map. And then help. We all know help. So I'm going to come back to this map. And right now we're seeing the whole US. If you want to zoom in, which I'm going to do to Arizona, there's two ways. If you have a mouse, you can use your scroller and it scrolls for you. Or if you're using a laptop or don't have a mouse available, you can also use these. I find pretty easy to kind of zoom in or zoom out of where you're looking to go. Yeah, so I'm going to zoom into this Prescott area. Let's see. And this explore tool right here, you can see it's highlighted. That's what's letting me drag this map around with my mouse. Okay, so adding data. So we have a map. It looks nice, but it doesn't really have anything on it, right? So there's a couple. I'm going to show you first how to import data, then how to create layers of your own. And then we'll talk more about editing those and symbolizing those. So if we come to add data, we're going to click here. And you're adding data, you can save that, like it's data that somebody sent you, a shapefile or something like that, and you want to add it into here. So I have some shape files here. Now they look really nice and clean right here, but actually, if I pull up really quick where these files are located at, in my file explorer, they look a lot less pretty. They're very, there's a lot. So I need all of these to make the shapefile, or at a minimum, you need 4. So that's the CPG, DBF, SHP file, and a PRJ file. And that's what makes up a shapefile. So in my file explorer, they look really messy. When you're in Arc Pro, though, it actually recognizes, oh, you have everything you need to make a shapefile, and puts it into a nice, pretty single line. So that's something to keep in mind as you kind of work with shapefiles or feature layers. Okay, so I'm going to add in this Prescott shapefile, and it's going to draw this. So when you import them, it's just going to choose a symbology to kind of go with it. But this is the shape it should import. Yeah. Are there any questions kind of about that? Or I dive too far?
You do have one from Heatherly. What were the 4 types of files you need to make a shape file?
Oh, yes. So a CPG, a DBF, an SHP, and a PRJ file is the minimum you need. When you export something from Arc Pro, which I'll show you in a minute, it's going to actually give you all of these that you see here. I think there's 8 of them. And those kind of all come together to make that shapefile. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So now we have something that we've imported into here, which is great. We're going to come back over to this contents pane and see how this now has a check mark, and so does my topo map. But you can actually turn this kind of on and off by clicking that check mark. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to show you now 2 ways to create your own shapefile. So I'm going to show you the way I like to do it first, and then I'll show you kind of a more simple way, or kind of a quick go at it. So if you come over to this catalog pane on your right-hand side, and if you don't have this pane, you can go to View and then select Catalog pane, or if you accidentally close out of one of these panes, you can bring them back this way. You can also search them in your search bar. I personally use the search bar a lot, because like I said before, this isn't organized like ArcMap was, which is what was used to begin with. But so we have this geodatabase file. That's what this .gbd is. And this is created every time you make a new map. It makes its own geodatabase file for that specific map. So if I right-click on this, you'll see a bunch of options here. You can import features this way also, if you wanted to. As a side note, this will keep them tied to your map if you do it this way. I'll show you really quick how to do that. So if you click on the feature class, it'll pull up this little tool where it says feature class the geodatabase. And since I have this layer in here, I can just pull it straight in, or I could navigate using this browse folder to the file location again. And then you hit run, and it'll go ahead and pull that into this geodatabase. You might want to do this if you have a lot of files or you move files regularly. You can break the link between where ArcPro knows to pull that information from. And then you'll have to tell it, hey, go find that again elsewhere. But if you pull it into a geodatabase, you won't break the link. It'll stay with this map, even if you're moving this map between files or what have you. Okay, so that's why I like to create features this way. So you have feature data set, which is, I kind of think of like a folder for my features, like if I want to organize them a little bit more. Or you have a feature class. There's also a lot of other options, but we're going to focus on feature class right now. So a feature class is essentially the same thing as a shapefile. We can name it, and in this name, you can't have a space, but then you can give it an alias with the space. And the name will show up in your geodatabase. When you pull this over to the actual map, it'll change to the alias, so it just looks a little bit cleaner. The next is the type. So for feature classes, there's 3 main types that we work with. It's polygons, which is like an area. It's lines, which are, well, a line. And there's points, which are points. There's a bunch of other options. I wouldn't worry too much about these right now, especially if you're just starting. These 3 are pretty much all that I use. So if we're going to pull up a point, I think would be a fun one for us to make. You come, don't worry about these, like dive in further. This is the basics, just getting us started. You can hit next. You have this option for fields, and we're going to come back to this a little bit more in something called an attribute table here in a minute. But for those who know, you can click here, you can add a name and a text. And so you can add like a name. This is a way to kind of symbolize the features that you're going to draw, or give them data behind them. So like their name, if they tie to a project, if you wanted to calculate their geometry later on, this is kind of where you're able to create that. And it's okay if you don't do that immediately. There are other ways to kind of add to this area that I'll show you in a sec where it goes. I know it kind of feels floating right now. But there's a ton of things you can do. So like you can add a date, you could add a double, which is how you calculate geometry, or you can do text. And then if you come down here, you again have an alias, some other things, but this length is something to pay attention to. The more length you add to it, the more information or bigger that shapefile ends up becoming. And this is how this length refers to like how many characters of text that I want. So I'm going to say I want 20 characters or letters for that text because it's just a name. And then you can hit next. For those who may know, we have spatial reference. Don't worry too much about this. We'll probably have a whole series about it if it's needed. I use WGS 1984 for a lot. The other common one is NAD 97 or 64. But yeah. And then just go ahead, hit next. Don't worry about any of this. Just let it do its defaults, and then you can hit finish. So when you finish it, you have example points come up under your geodatabase. It'll also add it over here on my contents pane, and you can see it's using its alias because it doesn't have that underscore. Nothing is drawn on the map, right? Because all I did was make it. Now I have to tell Arc Pro, okay, I've made it. Now I want you to show me something. To do that, you come up here to edit, and then create. And that's where you kind of get this example points come up. If you're looking for something and you're like, wait, what I'm trying to create isn't over here, double check that it's actually checked on your contents pane. because that determines what you're able to edit or not at any given time or create. So if we pull this example point, we have a point. It kind of has it trace us. There's a bunch of other things that it could do, but just focus kind of on this first one to begin. You can actually just click and it'll drop that point. Or you can right click and you can have it snap to an absolute value. Right now, this map is in meters. I don't work in meters generally. So if you come down to this bottom here and drop this arrow, you can switch to UTM or decimal degrees or whatever format you're better with. I have a point for UTMs. So I'm
Sarah,
going
we
to
have a
snap.
question real quick.
Go ahead.
Is that the only method for editing a shapefile?
No, it is not the only method for editing a shapefile. So this is just creating a shapefile. If I pull this press kit back up, there's also edit vertices right here. And you can select something and be able to edit that way. There's a bunch of ways to kind of get to that edit if you wanted. Like with this modify tool, you can again kind of pull up the options to do that. There's like, so ArcGIS Pro, there's like 1,000 ways to do the same thing and get to the same tool. But yeah, definitely not the only way to create or edit. Yeah. But anyway, so you could snap to it if you wanted to. The other way, so I kind of dove into editing because that's just how my brain processes. But I did tell you I was going to show you an easier way to add a shapefile to this. So if you come to insert, you have the options of point map, line map, and polygon map. And you can just click on these and it'll pop it right over here. It says line notes. And it puts a line layer over here in your geodatabase for you. And then you're also able to edit or create from that. If I didn't answer that person's questions all the way, feel free to add more clarity. Like if there was a specific idea or way that you do it, or if you've seen it differently. Yeah. All right, so you can snap to your absolute value. So if you come 12S, go 3, 6, 2, 3, 3, 8. So if you type in the coordinates that you're looking for and then hit enter, it'll put that point down. You can see that point isn't in my field of view. So if we come over here to your contents pane and right click on that layer, you can actually select either zoom to layer and it'll zoom you to where you can see all your points, or you can open your attribute table and zoom to a specific point. This base map is cool and helpful to navigate with the roads and things, but what I'm trying to show you, this should be on a water tank of sorts. So I'm going to change my base map to imagery. And that all of these are available. They're kind of free from Esri. And so long as you're hooked up to Wi-Fi, you'll be able to have these base maps. And so if I zoom in here, you'll see that I found a random water tank and it looks like a trough over here. Since this is focused on range things, we're going to try to keep it in theme. As you can see, I highlight these points and they're switching on my map. It's just what I'm selecting here. And in this attribute table, I can change information so that I know that it's a storage, it's a trough. I would assume there's a pipeline going between the two, which I can draw and snap to. All right. Any questions? We had 2 ways to make a shapefile: editing your base map, your attributes. Oh, the other big thing that I forget a lot, saving. Saving what you do. You have to save it, otherwise it will disappear on you and go away. Yeah.
Can you set it to auto save?
No, you cannot. You have to save it.
They're
Yes.
wondering how to set up snapping.
Oh, how to set up snapping. Right here. So if you come to edit and you have snapping, there's a turn on or off snapping tool right here. And all you have to do is drop down this little arrow and actually slide this little bar and it'll turn it on for you. Other questions?
Hey, this is Tom in Springerville. Yes, I have a question.
All right.
We have the tools down at the bottom of the image where it's got the
Mm-hmm.
line, the corner. Do we have to click the polygon with the check in it to save it initially before we go up and save it in the top layer or the top, like with edit, and then you can do save?
So it's always good
Or
anything that's like a check or a keep. So it was just saying like
yeah,
I wanted this line, but that save had already saved it. So you can see my save still grayed out even when I checked that.
yeah, yeah.
So hitting here is kind of like the yes save. Hitting down here is
Okay.
always good if you want to like keep it,
Okay.
or of what you're actually drawing at the time. So it's like finishing your thing. So like if I do this and then hit there, it'll stop where I stopped drawing to kind of get out of my edit mode,
Get it
if
there.
that makes sense.
Okay, I didn't know if you had to click that box with the check first before you can save it up top
No.
or not. I've still just kind of muddling through this, trying to crawl through to learn it. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions?
I
Okay.
think we had one person put in the chat too, an extra way to an autosave feature for your ArcGIS. So
That there is.
He suggested he put in a feature. There's a suggested in there if people want to take a look at it.
Yeah, if there's a way to do it, I definitely don't. But it does warn you too. Like if I didn't save this and I go to close out of this map, it would warn me and be like, hey, you haven't saved your features. And then it'd warn me again of like, hey, do you actually want to save this map? But yeah, if there's an autosave, definitely check that out.
Yeah,
I haven't found it.
So the autosave feature for detail edits, to enable recurring automatic saves, you can expand the session tab, check the option for automatically save edits, and set the time interval or number of operations for the automatic save. So it's in the chat if they want to click on it and see that.
Yeah, go for it. I just hit the save. It warns me enough that it's good. But thank you who shared that. Okay. So that's kind of editing your shapefiles. We have shapefiles now. Let's talk about symbology. This is just going to be a start to symbology. There's a lot you can do with symbolizing your layers and getting them to look exactly the way that you want them to. The easiest way.
Before we jump into that, Sarah, really quick, is there a way to import a table of GPS points and it will populate in ArcGIS Pro?
Yes, there is. If you come back to map and go to add data, there's a points from table, which should let you import a table of points and make a layer. There's also likely a tool that can help, and we might cover that a little bit more in another session. But yes, there is ways. Okay, so we come to example points. If you right click on the layer that you're looking to edit, we're going to start with our example points. You come down, you can go to Symbology and it'll open up to this window here. The other way that's really easy to access it is just double clicking on the point itself and it'll pull you to this gallery. Or you double click here and it'll again pull you to this gallery. ArcGIS does have pre-populated or pre-available symbology for you to use. It's quite extensive. There's quite a bit in here for options, and there is a way to import your own symbology if your agency or you're sharing symbology with someone else or what have you to make it all uniform. You can import symbology into this so that you have your own kind of styles is what they call them. Right now, though, I'm going to just start with kind of the basics, and most people I would assume would probably just have what's available on ArcGIS. And so I'm going to just start with Circle 1. So Circle 1 makes two big black circles, and they might not be exactly what I want them to look like. So I can come over to the properties. So back into the gallery, double clicking on the actual image of the symbol. And then this is where you can kind of start to edit your colors, your sizes. There's, like I said, a lot you can do to get these to look exactly the way you want. I'm not going to dive too far into it, other than getting rid of this color refers to the fill color, and then our outline color. But if I just want an outline color, I also need an outline width, and then the size of the circle. And you'll see I'm changing things over here and nothing's changing on my map. That's because I have to apply them. So once I apply them, then they'll change and I can see what it looks like and kind of start tweaking from there. So yeah, so that's kind of points are pretty easy. You can add a halo, which I'll show you what that looks like. It adds kind of a halo and a fill kind of around those. Well, it's not a fill, it's essentially going around the point. But yeah. Another thing, so I was talking about that attribute table, and remember we called these trough and storage and then a blank. You can change this. So this is single symbol, meaning I'm going to change all of those single symbols across the entire layer to be the same, or you can make them unique values. And this is where your attribute table really comes in if you're trying to make things look different. Because this is pulling, this field 1 is referring directly back to those fields in the attribute table. And you can see, okay, cool, but it doesn't say storage and trough. It's okay. We just have to hit this little plus. Click on these with control and clicking, and then you're able to pull them all in. And now they all look different, but not necessarily how I want them to. So I can go back into here, kind of pick a certain color, and this is where you can kind of have fun with these. Well, not fun, but make them look good, right? Make sure everything's clear and easy to see as best as possible. So we'll do a square for the trough. Not the best colors to choose for a green background, but yeah. And then I wanted to show you kind of your lines in this gallery option have different options available to you. So there's a ton of symbology already in here that you can kind of pull and edit and tweak. And I could probably have a whole class on all the things that you could do with symbols in here. Yeah. And then the last one, we'll pull up our options for polygons.
There's no trough symbols. Darn.
There aren't automatically trough symbols. There is some symbology out there. I don't know, like there is ways to create a trough symbol by going through properties, and then you can edit these this is like layers. Like I said, I could have a whole class on what you could do, and you can actually like draw essentially a trough with lines and things, or import a style feature so that you have that trough symbol.
Hey, thanks. I know that when I was in the Forest Service, they have their own range symbols. You can, incorporate it, but now kind of on my own.
Yeah, so there's some out there. I know NRCS, I think, has their symbology. And if you're able to get your hands on that style layer, you can definitely pull it in, or we can draw it at another session. But yeah. One more thing kind of about symbology. So like, let's say we did draw a trough layer. This square is not a trough, but let's say we did draw it and we're like, oh, that took too much time. I never want to have to do that again. You can come when you're in this properties, or you can come up to these 3 bars and you can save that symbol to style. And when you do that, it'll give you an option to name it. What style you're saving it to. I'm just going to save it to my favorites because I don't have another style uploaded into this. And you can hit OK. And that'll make it come up to this favorite tab so that now it's there. It stays with the map. You don't have to draw it again. And this has pulled some of my other common points too that I saved. So there's ways to save it once you put in the work. Any other big questions about symbology? Yeah.
Looks like you're good so far, Sarah.
Cool. Sweet. Well, cool. Then let's go into making a paper map. So this is cool, right? But this doesn't look like a map you would just export and share with somebody as is on a piece of paper. You could, but it doesn't look the best. So if we come to insert, this is where you could, this is kind of, I believe, a different feature than ArcMap, where you could add like another map and have multiple like world maps going at the same time. Or you could add a layout. This layout is where I tend to pull my paper maps from. You can make your own layout and be able to import that file so that you don't have to keep making the layout from scratch. But this layout refers to the layout of what your paper map's gonna kind of look like. So they have different sizes if you're just kind of getting started. So yeah, I'm gonna pull in just an 8.5 by 11 normal size sheet of paper. And that's what it looks like, a blank piece of paper. So some big things that you always tend to have on maps is this map frame. You have your default extent, or your map. I tend to add this one, but you can do either or and be able to navigate within it. Let's see. Control Z is always your friend also in this. It does know it. But you can draw this. It has your ruler, so you can know you're being centered or straight or making sure it's all even. And it pulls in what I was looking at. And then you can see over on the left, we still have our contents pane with a drawing order, just now it's under layout. And we have the map frame, which then has all of our shape files and things in it that are tied directly to this map. And then they have a lot of kind of easy grab things, if you will. So if we come to something like a scale bar, they have a bunch of preloaded options for us, for you to kind of choose and make your own map. And then you kind of just start drawing away in here. Add a north arrow. Ooh, maybe. You can zoom in on your mouse, or I think there's another way too. I almost always use a mouse on the layout though. Because do be careful when you're zooming or moving these. You can just like scroll so far away that you're having to go back and try and find where your actual piece of paper is. Yeah. And then another big thing we tend to do is a legend. So let me pull in a legend here. And you can see these are pretty basic. They still don't look the bestest. So like for this legend, I'm going to right click on it and go into properties. And that's going to let me edit this legend to kind of look the way that I want. So add things, you know, like a title. You can go into show properties and remove some of these extras. Not that one. There. And then I could also add a border. So like this is kind of your general options, editing the names. Another big thing is showing only the features visible in the map extent is one that I almost always click. And then you can come over here and add things like if you needed a background to that legend, or if you needed or wanted a border, you can do that. Same thing with all of these properties and all of the things that you add in here. So like the scale bar, I could add a border. I could change the map unit. So instead of in miles, I want it to look, you know, in feet. And same with the north arrow. So that properties is really where you're editing a lot of those finer details. Something that I also tend to always add is a if I can find it, just a map frame. It kind of just makes the maps look cleaner. It does give me a little bit less working area. Oh, not that though. Just a square that I'll edit to be just a black line so that it's kind of clean. So if you do like or if you're having issues kind of selecting something, you can also change the drawing order here, send it to the back so that you can kind of select what you wanted again, if there's something like on top of something else. Questions? Concerns? Complaints?
Looks like you're good.
Cool. So now I have a map. It looks a little bit better. You know what the heck I have in there. We have a scale bar, so we know our size. We have our north arrow, so we know which orientation we're looking at. The next thing you'll want to do is probably share this map, right? So you can print it directly from here. If you're using something like a Venza, you'll want to export it. And that'll pull out this layout export. Let me close this out so that you guys can hopefully see all the things in here. So with this export, you have some options. So we have the file type. We could do a PDF, we could do a JPEG. I do a PDF, especially for Venza. And then you can go ahead and browse and make sure you're saving it to where you want it to be saved and naming it what you want it to be named. This is perfect for this training, so I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to put example map 1. Oh, I feel like my map is missing something very important, which would be a title, right? So if I go back to insert, you can add a text, kind of like I started to do, and be able to kind of add a title into there or add text that supports it. And again, there's a couple different ways to kind of get that in there. I'm going to leave this one for now. But yeah, and you can do a lot of options one thing that you'll want to make sure is checked, or that I do on all of my maps, is this export georeference information. That means like if you're going to put this into a Venza or something, it actually has that georeference data for it, so that it's not just a PDF. There's a little bit more to it. With that there, if you have this unchecked, it won't work in a Venza. Yeah, and then you simply export it. And then you'll have this little bar. Can view the exported file, and it pulls my map for me. Oh. Now I'll check my notes, see if I missed anything. But if not, if you guys have any questions, that's kind of the bare bones. Make a map, like start a map file, make a map, make some symbology or bring in some features, and then exporting a paper map of some sort. Kind of the bare bones of ArcPro. Does anyone feel overwhelmed and panicked? I'm feeling okay.
I do got a question, Sarah, if I can jump in.
Do it.
So going back to Symbology, about a year ago, you sent me a file of the standardized Symbology we're supposed to be using on our projects. I have not been figured out how to load that into ArcPro and how to access it. Is that something we want to talk about here, or you and I have a sidebar later?
We can try and talk about it here. It's been a long time since I imported Symbology. But let me see. So it should be, it may be as simple. Yep. So if you go to insert, you go to styles, and you go to this bottom one where it has a little arrow coming down. You should be able to import that style file, and you just have to navigate to it on your computer and then pull it in. It should be like a .sstyl.
All right, do that again. You went like way too fast for me.
Sorry. Insert.
Insert.
Right here to this little arrow, import style. And then you should just have to navigate to where that style is in your folder, so long as it's formatted correctly. If it doesn't work, I mean, you can have a sidebar, but that should do it.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember where I saved it, so let me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll work with it, and if I can't find it, I'll message you.
Cool.
Thanks.
Sarah, we have one in respect to ArcGIS projects. Do you have any guidance on project management, and how do you store and keep track of everything on your local computer?
Yeah, so ArcGIS makes its own file that I kind of showed you. So like all of my projects, like I said, saved to a hard drive. They're in this ArcGIS projects folder. So every map you make, so long as you tell it to put it there, we'll put it there. And that's where everything's housed. Each map has its own folder, and then it kind of goes from there. If we're talking like more into like the actual organization of your maps and your data within your maps, I highly recommend the Geo database with the contents pane. So you can add more new geodatabases or add external databases into here. And that's really how I keep all of my projects organized, especially if they're like themed similarly, or I'm pulling data across multiple maps or what have you. That's a really easy way to kind of keep it all straight. And then using your featured data set, I kind of think of them as folders. They're probably do a little bit more than just a folder. Oh. Oh. if it wants to make one for me. So that kind of makes a little folder in there that it might let me do this, it might not. Can then put different shape files into like a way to organize a little bit more. Yeah, and on my personal computer, like I have a dedicated hard drive to mapping, but it's because I map a lot. So it can get they can get quite robust in their size. But yeah, I hope that answered you. With your, no, so I don't have a master folder with my general shapefiles. I keep any shapefile that's being tied to a map, I almost always put it in a geodatabase so that it stays with that map unless I have to export it to send to somebody or something like that. But then it goes into whatever project folder I'm sending those off to. So the geodatabase acts as like my master folder for each map. Did that make sense, Brandon? Feel free to unmute too. No. Okay. So no. So like if I have a geodatabase, so I have a map, right? And I put information into the map. I put that information into the geodatabase. If I needed that information from a different map in this current map, I would add a geodatabase. Let's see. Let me go. So like I'll pull this portal mapping in here. So these are a bunch of geodatabases that are tied to this portal mapping map. And I can pull this geodatabase into this, and then I'm able to use the shapefiles within that geodatabase to kind of, I don't know what's in here, but to be able to pull into this map if I needed data shared across multiple of them. So I only pull data in once typically, and then I pull multiple geodatabases in if I need to. Oh, you guys are free. Thank you for joining.